A good Erev Yom Tif, may it be a Shana Tova Umetuka, a healthy and happy and sweet new year. We are gripped, we're transfixed, maybe even a little bit terrified by the Torah reading that's always our portion on the second day of Rosh Hashana. Here, as in Israel, every Jew around the world is hearing this portion read on the second day of Rosh Hashana. It's frightening. The idea of God asking Abraham to offer his son, his only son, as a sacrifice. What kind of God? What kind of father? All good and important questions, and they all deserve full discussion. In the Akedah, in the binding of Isaac, chapter 22 of Genesis, God calls to Abraham and says, "Bring up your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, to the place where I will show you, and make of him an offering to me." Abraham wakes up early in the morning, sets off with his gear and his son and his servants, arrives at Mount Moriah, the place that God shows him, and prepares the offering. At the last moment, he's stopped by a heavenly voice which says, "Stop, stop, stay your hand, don't do anything to the boy. Don't do him any harm. Now I know that you are a God-fearing man, since you have not withheld your son from me." Then in the next verse, the text reads, "And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he saw another ram caught in a thicket by the horns. Vayisa Avram es einav v'yar v'hine ayel achar nechaz b'svach b'karnav." Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Vayelech Avram v'yikach es ha'ayel v'yalehu la'ola tachas b'no. Two things grab our attention here. Ayel achar, what is the meaning of another ram? And what is the meaning of tachat benoi, instead of his son? What, if anything, does all that have to do with us? What does it mean, ayel achar, another ram? And what does it mean, tachas beno, instead of his son? On Sunday, when we will hear the shofar with its 100 sounds, we'll remember the Akedah, the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac, which is the topic of this Torah portion, and we'll look forward to the sounding of the great shofar that will happen in the Messianic era. So these connections anchor us between past and future. And we're looking for the meaning for us, for ourselves, today, now. What is the connection between Isaac and the ram? So much so that the Torah calls it ayel achar, another ram. And the sacrifice of the ram, remember, is tachat beno, in place of his son, Abraham's son. What is this saying to us? There's a medrash in Yalkut Shimoni on this passage, which says, "Ha'ayel hazeh lo yatsa mimenu davar levatala." From this ram, the ram that Abraham offered, nothing went to waste. You may recall that it explains that each part of the ram was used for something without which we could scarcely imagine our world, our Jewish world. The smaller of the ram's two horns became a shofar that was sounded at Mount Sinai. The larger of the two horns will be the shofar that sounds to herald the Messianic era. The ashes of the ram were made into the foundation of the Mizbeach, the altar in the temple in Jerusalem. The hide of the ram became the garment, the cloak of Elijah the prophet. Its sinews were the strings on the harp of King David. Imagine those things absent from our world. What would our life be without the Torah we received at Sinai, without the hope of better days ahead, or without the Psalms of David HaMelech? But let's turn the lens on ourselves. Let's note an even more intimate connection, a one-to-one correspondence between the ram and Isaac, ayel achar, another ram, tachas beno, in place of his son, and us. If the ram that was in fact sacrificed had all those world-transforming qualities in potential in it, Perhaps we do too. Perhaps we, as the children of these patriarchs and matriarchs, perhaps we have those world-changing and life-transforming qualities in us too, albeit in potential. Let it be said of us, and if we resemble the ram which we're recalling today with the Torah reading and the sounding of the shofar, let it be said of us that ha'ayil hazeh lo yatsa mimenu davar levatala, that nothing from our potential should go to waste either. What's the nature of a sacrifice? Is it giving something up? Is it doing without? A korban is the Hebrew word for sacrifice, an offering, also not an inaccurate translation, a somewhat accurate translation, if not complete. Let's get to the heart of the matter, though. Korban is from the Hebrew word karov, kuf resh bet, to be close, to come close. The real purpose of a korban, in addition to atonement or thanksgiving or celebration, whatever the occasion for an offering might be, the purpose of a korban is for us to come close, to come closer in our relationship and connection to God by giving something of ourselves. Now we're getting somewhere. This whole ram, another ram, not Isaac, but another ram that was offered in his place, tachas beno, in place of his son, has these qualities that we look for in ourselves, in our own hearts and souls, and through them, through that search, we come closer to God. How is that? One of the horns was the shofar sounded at Sinai. The other horn is the shofar that will sound in the Messianic era. Sinai is one of the pivotal moments in our people's existence. The first of those moments was the redemption from Egypt, when we became a free people, slaves no more. The second was at Sinai, when we learned what to do with that freedom and how to make our lives meaningful. Mipi hagvura, it was the voice of God from the mountain telling us the 10 Commandments and how to live our lives, what our values would be as Jews. They're out there saying, but today is modern times, to which we say, it's always modern times, always has been, always will be. All these lessons of Torah are true and relevant for every moment in every age, if we are willing to make it so. The other horn is the herald of the Messiah, the Messianic era, when there will be no more war, no more strife, no more sickness, no more death, only chayim nitzchim, eternal life. It can't come quickly enough. Maimonides writes in his 13 Principles of Faith, which some people read every day, even though the Messiah may be delayed, I still await his coming every day. Every day. We are waiting and expecting and hoping that things will get better, and if we work hard, we can have a part in the process. The hide of this Ayel Achar Tachas Beno, the other ram, in place of Isaac, in place of us, or maybe with us, became the cloak of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. We sing about him every Saturday night. You're welcome to join us in Shul for Mariv and Havdalah, especially if you like to sing Eliyahu Hanavi. Bimhei Ravi Amenu, we say, Yavo Elenu, speedily in our days, come to us, Im Mashiach ben David, with the Messiah, who is the descendant of King David. This is the ingathering of the exiles, Kibbutz Galuyot. A number of our dear friends from KST have got in the express lane on this and are already awaiting the Messianic age from Israel, where we all expect to be sooner rather than later. Now, how do the rest of us get there? Part of it is geographic. Part of it is greater than that. We have to fix the world and make it ready for redemption, fitting for redemption, a proper vessel for redemption, so that that day can arrive. We have to stand up for what's right. We have to not stand idly by while another's blood is being shed. We have to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. We also have to have kosher mezuzahs, and daven every day, and learn some Torah every day. Give tzedakah to help others and to bring tzedek, justice and righteousness, into a world that desperately needs it. We have to make peace among ourselves, which is sometimes among the greatest challenges. This is how we make the world fitting and ready and deserving of the better days ahead that are yet to come. And what about the sinews of the ram that made the strings of David HaMelech's harp, King David's harp? There's a story about a mother who wanted to get her son to practice the violin, so she took him to a concert with a world-renowned violinist. Afterwards, the mother took her son to meet the performer, and as any teenager might do, he said, "Yeah, you have a great instrument. If I had such a violin, I would also make beautiful music." The famous violinist put down his own Stradivarius and asked for the kid's violin from its case. "Let me have yours." The kid gave him his violin, and the maestro took it in hand and played beautifully, and handed it back to the boy and said, "If you practice and you work hard, you can make beautiful sounds too." We come to Shul on Rosh Hashanah. We're uplifted by the beautiful, stirring voices and soaring neshamas of our chazanim. We hear our wonderful choir, who are back, thankfully, after a hiatus of a few years. You could be uplifted, you could be inspired, and you could say to yourself, "I could never daven so beautifully on my own. Why would I even try?" On the other hand, you could say, "Practice, practice, work hard." That was so beautiful in Shul on Rosh Hashanah. I may not be a chazan, but let me try to take inspiration from that and daven the best that I can. Not just Musaf on Rosh Hashanah or Mincha, which I hope everyone comes back to after Tashlich, but the day after and the day after and next Shabbos and every time you open the Siddur. If not every day at first, then many days. Let's start with one more. The Kol Demama Daka, the still small voice that speaks about in Melachim Aleph, in the book of 1 Kings, reminds us to summon that voice from within ourselves, in tefillah, in prayer, where we have a chance every day to talk to God. The Akedah, the binding of Isaac in chapter 22 of Genesis, is one of the few passages that's in our Siddur to be read every single day of the year. Along with our song of thanksgiving at the sea, Shira Tayam, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, confronts us with all these challenges, all these questions, and so many more. They say that Judaism is there to comfort the troubled and to trouble the comfortable. So thankfully, so many of us are in the comfortable category. We can absorb a little troubling. Let's look at these challenges as a chance to raise ourselves up, think a little more deeply, to seek a broader vision, to seek a newer world. On this anniversary of creation, the birthday of the world, as we'll sing in the Musaf repetition, may our mouths' words rise beautifully before you. Aresha sefasenu yerav lefanecha, kel ram v'nisa, most high and elevated God. Mevin umazin mabit umakshiv, lekol tekiyasenu, the God who understands and who listens, who sees and heeds the sound of our tekiyas. Usekabel berachmim uveratzon, please accept with compassion and with favor our order of kingship, of remembrance, and of shofar. May it herald for us a Shana Tova umetuka, a happy and a healthy and a sweet new year. Gemar Chatima Tova.